Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the second in our presentations with our summer speakers series. My name is Marilyn McComb. I'm the executive director of the ARC of North Central Virginia. We support people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in Fauquier, Culpeper, Madison, Rappahannock, and Orange. As well as their families. And one of our primary core services is information and referral or family consults. So families are welcome to reach out at any time for connection and information. Our other programs are listed on our website, so check that out when you have a moment if you haven't already. For our presentation today, if during the presentation, if you could keep your microphone on mute, and it's your option on whether to have your video on or not, up to you. And we'd like to use the chat for questions during the presentation, and then I'll communicate those to Cortney. So feel free, as things come up, please do, make a comment, and we'll ask a question during, and then at the end, we'll also have a more in-depth question and answer time. I'm going to let one more person in. And without further ado, I would like to hand this over to Cortney Heykoop. She is an investment advisor with Clover Leaf Wealth Strategies. So Cortney, take it away.
Good morning, all. My name is Cortney Heykoop. Like she said, I'm a financial advisor. I service clients throughout Virginia, really, but I have clients that span from Massachusetts to Florida, and I go as far west as Illinois, and then I jump over to Colorado. But I serve primarily families that are in the special needs community. As you see on my screen there, you'll see Woody and Lily. Lily is my middle child. She's the one that made me a special needs mom. And that is Woody, who is now retired and has a lot more gray hair than he does in that picture. Lily is now 17 years old and Woody just turned 12. Woody is the hero in our household. We've had Woody since Lily was in second grade, and he is just been phenomenal. So I am here to speak with you today around financial planning for yourself, your child, as they kind of transition through the various stages of their lives, and kind of put some questions in your mind of things that you may need to think about, actions you may need to take, hopefully answer lots of questions that you may have. Like Marilyn said, please put your questions in the chat. She can bring them to me during the presentation. We can address them at the end. So I will go ahead. It's not letting me advance. There we go. This is a disclaimer. I clear through Woodbury Financial Services. That's my broker dealer, kind of, I say, my back office. And this seminar today is completely informational. It is not a sales pitch. It is really just to give you all the information you need to kind of move forward through this process. So the first thing that I always tell parents when they say to me, I guess I should mention, I'm also a chartered special needs consultant, which is that financial planning designation surrounding special needs, right? So I get a lot of families that come to me and they say, okay, I need to set up an ABLE account, or I need to fund this trust. And my first question is, well, tell me about your retirement. And that is because we have to put our air masks on first. If we want to make sure we are in a solid position to take care of our child into their adulthood, through their education, all of that, we need to make sure our financial footing is is solid. And a big part of that is our retirement plan. Retirement is the one thing in your life you cannot borrow for. So we always want to make sure that we are, covering the foundation for our financial house first. That's our insurance, our savings, rainy day savings, and our emergency fund, whatever you want to call it, and our retirement. So when we talk about retirement, there's really two types of conversation: the conversation about the ascent and the conversation about the descent. And in special needs, as well as with any family, there's a lot of kind of peaks that you hit climbing up to the top, as well as things that you're going to encounter as you descend the mountain. And so I always kind of picture Mount Everest when I am talking about people's financial plans, because halfway up, you turn around and you see an amazing view, right? Like there's a lot of goals and good things that happen on the way up as well as on the way down. But there's also some pitfalls and challenges that we need to kind of make sure we're planning for. I don't know if any of you've read the book Into Thin Air, but it's about, a climber who went up Mount Everest. And one of the things that strikes me in there is they say that more people die on the descent than on climbing, trying to get to the peak. And that's because they have done so much planning that they know exactly all the pitfalls and steps that they need to take to get to that top part, but they haven't done adequate planning on the way down. And that is a really important part of our retirement planning, and something that I always make sure I address with my clients. And we'll talk a little bit more about that descent in a minute. I always, when I talk about retirement, this is a picture of my mom. She was a Loudoun County school teacher, and she is now retired, just turned 70. And her retirement versus the retirement of my grandma Lil, my grandma Lil's picture was right there, I don't know where it went, are extremely different, right? Just how much retirement has changed from one generation to the next is staggering. Let's talk about Lily Mae first. She died in the house in which she raised all of her kids. She lived off of Social Security. She didn't travel much, except maybe to one of our dance competitions or soccer games or something like that. Whereas you turn to Patty, she retired at 62. She travels. She's always going out to Notre Dame with all of her alumni friends and, seeing games, or they're, going on different trips. She's watching the grandkids. Every day is Saturday, right? And she will, like I said, she's 70. Over probably the next 5 years, she's going to transition into a different phase of retirement where she is slowing down, right? So how we traditionally plan for retirement, or how our system was set up for retirement for when it was constructed for Lily's generation, is much different. There's a lot of different challenges that we have to face for the current generation of baby boomers, and then on for our generation as well. So what are some of those challenges that just are in general that we need to think about outside of our special needs considerations, which we're going to get to? One that's really highlighted right now, can't turn on the news without hearing people talk about it, is inflation. Just in general terms, a normal 3% increase over the length of your retirement can be significant, and it can really impact your purchasing power. Let's see. Then you have, of course, market risk, another thing you can't turn on the TV today without hearing about, because we, after a long run of a great market, we're really now in a period of volatility and change. And that does cycle. We typically have a down market every 10 years. historically. So, you know, planning for that, and when that downturn is timed in relation to your retirement has sometimes a greater impact. So looking at that and planning for that is important. And that those two go hand in hand with a savings withdrawal rate. So once you have this large, hopefully large nest egg to pay for your retirement, how much is safe to take out each year without it without it being detrimental to making it for as long as you live and making sure that it lasts. Historically, we used to always say 4%. But after the down market in 2008, a lot of analysts revised that number to 2.8, just shy of 3%. Which creates an interesting conundrum, right? So a lot of you, I'm sure, have heard about required minimum distributions, which is the amount you're required to take from your savings, from your retirement savings once you turn 72. That starts at almost 4%. So it is shy of 4%, but you know, kind of balancing those two, what you have to take, what is safe to take, and finding a good course for you in retirement is essential. So working with a trusted advisor is important. And that plays hand in hand with longevity. You know, we don't want you to outlive your money, right? And we are, as a race, we're living longer. The mortality rates keep getting longer and older. So we need to plan for that. Another challenge that is often not given a great deal of thought, but is surviving the loss of a spouse. In addition to just the emotional and the heartache that causes, there are also some financial considerations. If a pension is involved, a pension can be reduced. The amount of Social Security can be affected. Just the amount of income coming in, if one person passes away, that can impact the Social Security or that is usually the base for a lot of financial plans. So there's a lot of considerations and planning that would go into just kind of the navigating the loss of a spouse from a financial standpoint as well. And the last one is taxes. You know, taxes, we have found, and a lot of advisors will say the same thing, that many of their clients are not experiencing a decrease in taxes in retirement because they're not having a huge decrease in spending. Remember how I told you how Patty's retirement is much different than Lil's. Every day, Saturday, she's traveling, she's doing things that cost more money. So we don't have a significant drop off in expenses when people retire. They're pulling more out of their retirement accounts. So taxes become a factor. So we want to make sure we have a good tax strategy in place as well. So as you see, the saving for retirement and planning for retirement is a lot more than just sticking money in my 401k, right? I need to have a plan in place, making sure that I know if I'm putting enough away, what this will look like, how this will manifest itself into my retirement. And that really impacts these bottom three things that I've listed here: tax planning, estate planning, and financial planning. Working with a good CPA, a good accountant, and a good financial advisor to make sure that you have everything in place and you have put your air mask on so that you can best help those around you is really important. Because that goes straight into our kind of the meat of of our conversation today, and that is the special needs planning. So why is special needs planning important? The main reason that we want to do this is we want to protect the government programs that our child or our family member is receiving. So what could those be? It could be supplemental Social Security. It could be Social Security disability income or the disabled adult child benefit. It could be Medicaid or Medicare, and a variety of other local supports and services that may be available in your county. Most of these, once someone becomes 18, goes from an entitlement to a qualification situation. So you have to qualify in order to, you have to be eligible to receive these services. And there is a financial component to many of them. Supplemental Social Security income, we all know the number is way too old and definitely needs to be updated. But the $2,000 in assets, right? So how can we save for our child? How can our family save for our child? Or how can a family member build up money so that they're not living at a poverty level and still receive the services that are necessary from the government? And the main way that we do that is with the use of a special needs trust. We all call it a special needs trust, but an attorney is going to let you know the legal name is supplemental needs trust. And that is because it is supposed to supplement the things in which Social Security and Medicaid, Medicare does not cover. If a trust is set up in a way that it covers those things, then Social Security could be reduced. So working with an attorney that is well-versed in special needs, not just a general estate planning attorney, but one that specializes in special needs is very important, because you want to make sure the wording of the trust is going to stand up legally over the course of time. I need to slide your picture so I can see my screen here. Sorry about that. So special needs planning is quite in depth. We, of course, want to review the estate of the family, and we want to construct and execute the trust in a way that it fits with what they want to accomplish and how they want to do it. We want to analyze the government programs, what the timing of those, the benefits that they will receive, because that will all go into developing the adult child's financial plan, right? So I have parents who may already have an adult child and are trying to plan for once they are gone, or they have a teen who is going to be transitioning into adulthood, and they're trying to determine what the child will receive, what they will need, and how we can kind of make that all work. So depending upon where you are on that spectrum is kind of what you need. But it is something, and I'll say this multiple times today, that needs to be updated frequently, at least annually, to make sure that it is in line with where you're going. And the adult child's financial plan needs to be done in conjunction with a parental plan. Sometimes I have parents who've come to me and they already have had a financial plan done by a different advisor, and I can use that data to know what's going to be left in an estate potentially as inheritance for the child, or how much the parents are budgeting that they are currently supplementing. So we know how much we will need to eventually have in the trust. And that's the next bullet point there, is funding of the special needs trust. Once we have a trust, how do we fund it? And the last leg of the special needs planning is that transitional planning, the guardianship, conservatorship, or supported decision making, depending upon the family member and what their needs are. But let's back up and talk a little bit more about the special needs trust. I already told, I'll read the legal definition here for you, just to cover that base, but your picture's in my way. There we go. It's a type of irrevocable legal agreement established for the benefit of an individual with physical or mental disabilities, while at the same time allowing the beneficiary to receive the essential needs-based government assistance. So that's what I was saying, is that key, that it's going to supplement. So people always say, well, what can the trust pay for and what can it not pay for? Special needs trust cannot pay for room and board. So it cannot pay for your food, cannot pay for your housing, or supplement those in any way. That said, we'll talk about housing loophole in a little bit, but it cannot supplement what those things that Social Security covers, or it will be reduced. So people will say, well, what about, going out to dinner? Well, that can be classified as entertainment or community engagement instead of food. So, there's easy distinctions there. But, when it comes to, a phone, cable, streaming services, clothing, travel companion, there's a variety of different things that it can be used for. You just have to be careful that the trust is worded correctly, that it is to supplement those needs. And that's kind of gets to the heart of why is the trust important. So let's do a case study real fast. I have, well, we've already talked about my family, so let's use my family. Patty, I said she's in her 70s. Let's advance it a good 20 years, and she passes away. And in her will, she has listed her grandchildren. Each of her grandchildren will receive a fifth of her inheritance. That goes to Lily, who, let's assume she is on Social Security supplemental income. That will count as an asset immediately and will reduce her Social Security benefit until that asset has been depleted, which I'm sure is not the intent of the grandparents who want to leave money to their grandchildren, especially in the case of a special needs. They want that to be there for the attendant care or any of the other things that the family member might need. So we want to establish that trust so that grandma can now live or leave Lily's portion to the supplemental needs trust of Lily Heykoop, so that it no longer impacts her Social Security or any other benefits that she may receive. So I've listed two types. Go ahead.
I was going to say a quick question on that. So is there any way for the individual themselves to circumvent, and like maybe they don't know about the inheritance that they've been that they may be eligible for? So is there any way to protect, like in general, from having that happen?
So yes, it's tricky in that it has to be done before the end of the month. So God forbid grandma passes away on the 29th, right? But first party trusts are money that comes from the first party, which would be the special needs person, right? It's their money. So if a money is left, we would have until the end of that month to get it into a special needs a first party special needs trust. Or another common way we will see money go into a first party trust is if someone is involved in an accident and they receive a payout from the insurance company. it will then go into a special needs trust for them, so that it doesn't impact their social security, disability, or anything else. Okay.
Yeah, so
So
if you know, like direct family members, I guess the best course is to educate them so that they get the right terminology. is what you're saying.
yes, exactly. And that's one thing that I do in the annual review is, have you had the conversation with grandma and grandpa, or if there's an aunt or uncle that, maybe doesn't have kids and is planning on leaving money to your child, whatever the situation may be, having that discussion to educate the family member that if you don't leave this with the proper designation, this could be the ramification. It's worth changing your beneficiary. It's worth amending that will. It's worth amending, a trust document or anything like that. So we kind of started into that conversation as to what a first party trust is, and that's that it's coming from the first party, the person who is the beneficiary. The third party trust, some people will also call them family trusts, or family money. It's money coming from the family. So money that I want to leave to my child, money grandma has left to the child, money aunt and uncle is left to the child, money that is left directly in the name of the trust. And it is usually funded with inheritance and life insurance. We'll talk about that in a little bit more detail. But that is the main difference between a first party and a third party trusts. A lot of times people will, when they are kind of doing their estate planning and they're doing their own will, their own trusts, all of that, they will have the attorney set up a first and a third party trust just so that it is there should the need arise, right? If I already have a first party trust set up and grandma dies on the 30th of the month, that money comes in, we're safe, right? We already have the place to put it. So having establishing both of those in your estate planning documents is a very wise idea. But most of us, when we are talking about trusts, are talking about a third party trust trusts families put in place. It's family money, because there's another big difference between a first and a third party trust, and that's who gets the money after. On a first party trust, it is subject to Medicaid payback. So if money is left in a first party trust, the state can say, well, we have paid X amount of dollars on behalf of this person over their lifetime. That money comes back to us. Any left over that amount would then go to the beneficiaries. There usually is not anything left over the amount. Third party trusts stay within the family. So my daughter's trust might someday go to her family, or should she never marry, it would maybe revert back to her siblings. However, we have set that up as the successor beneficiaries in that planning phase. So the third party trusts are usually managed by the family, and the money stays within the family. Now I didn't have it on here, and I should add it. You'll hear a lot too about pooled trusts, and pooled trusts are trusts that where all the money is pooled together from multiple disabled persons and is managed by an organization. Some of these pooled trusts are subject to Medicare repayment, or they stay within the trust should someone die. But the ARC does have a pooled trust where you can name the beneficiaries. So a lot of my clients will have both a trust set up at the ARC as well as one that they personally manage themselves, right? So a third party trust can have a checking account that you're putting money into and writing checks for various services or needs of the child. Usually while parents are alive, they want to maintain control over how the money is spent. So they establish the trust accounts with financial advisors, banks, wherever is convenient for them. Whereas if you use a pooled trust, you have to go to them, request the money, and then it is paid out. And usually when the parents are alive, they want to maintain that control. But a pooled trust utilizing someone like a program like the ARC is fantastic in that it can help with family relationships. It can also help with education. So when something happens to the parents, the next person who is going to be kind of handling things for the disabled adult might be a sibling, might be an aunt and uncle, usually someone that is not as trained and proficient in what is considered a qualified expense and what isn't, what they need to do, what they need to be careful of, all of that. So having the ARC step in to handle that is, or another entity, is extremely helpful. You might not want a child who is pretty high functioning, but maybe can't handle their own finances, having to go to a brother or sibling to ask for money, right? Where they can go to the ARC, and that kind of helps maintain that sibling relationship. So there's a lot of different factors to consider in establishing that trust and how you want it to work for your specific family and also into the future. I have a lot of families who will have it set up so that, Big Brother takes over the management of the trust. However, he has the option if he would like to hire an attorney to do that or to turn it over to an organization such as the ARC. I always tell people to make sure it's listed in there that there is kind of a trustee of last resort if family does not want to step up or is unable to step up or whatever the case may be. Marilyn, were there more questions on that before I go into the ABLE? Because that's a huge, mind-boggling topic right there.
I was going to say, this is the heavy part of this presentation, but I think, does anybody have any questions? Please, you could chime in right now or put them in the chat. The pooled trust, that's always confused my brain, and I'm glad for the refresher on it. I think the other advantage is just having somebody that you're able to go and get advice or like information from on a more regular basis.
Yes, for sure.
Because all of this, to me, you can hear it 15 times, but it's still a little, unless you're working with it every day, it's hard to digest it all.
Right.
But I don't see any other questions, so I guess jump right on in.
Okay. So the next we have our topic I wanted to kind of go over in this are ABLE accounts. Okay. ABLE accounts are important for the same reason that trusts are, right? It protects the government benefits, right? I always want to stress to people, this is another tool in your pocket. It is not a replacement for estate planning, right? It is not necessarily a replacement for establishing a special needs trust. Mainly because of the last bullet point here, it has a $100,000 limit. So if grandma leaves $200,000 to your child, the ABLE account is not going to be able to hold it without jeopardizing Social Security. So if the ABLE account has over $100,000, those assets are counted towards your qualifications. Another factor is there's varying state rules. Here in Virginia, they did pass a law that Virginia ABLE accounts are no longer subject to Medicare repayment or Medicaid repayment. However, that may not be the same in another state. So you have to be careful kind of where it's established, where you're living, and what those rules are as to how you utilize the ABLE account. It is a nice, convenient way to handle, you know, I always say kind of first party money is a good place for it. But you know, if say for example, your child is working, and we don't necessarily have the ability to establish a retirement account because the retirement account is counted as an asset that would jeopardize Social Security, they can put a portion of their income into their ABLE account. I remind people that ABLE accounts are set up on the same platform as 529 educational accounts. Okay. Money in there can be used for education. 529 plans can be rolled over into ABLE accounts. And they have very similar kind of handling here in the state of Virginia. They're done on that same platform. But you do get a state income tax deduction for putting the money in. The money does grow income tax free as long as it is used for disabled or qualified disability expense. And it has some benefits, you know. It can be used for education as well. So if, you know, somebody is trying to decide, do I do a 529 or an ABLE account? For tax purposes, I may have my client do both. And if it's not used for education, roll it over into the ABLE. So it's a great tool in your pocket. It has a lot of flexibility on how you can use it. There is one really shining star, at least right now. There is a housing loophole. They have not closed this. When you read qualified disability expenses, housing is a qualified disability expense under ABLE. It is not under your trusts, neither a first party or a third party trust. It is not a qualified expense. You cannot supplement housing directly through the trust. You can through your ABLE account. You also can use money in the trust to fund an ABLE account. So there's like I said, a loophole where you can take money out of a trust, put it into an ABLE account, and use it to pay for housing. Now, can that law be changed? Yes, it can. Just like they took away Medicaid repayment to make ABLE accounts more attractive, they could take away the housing loophole to save some tax dollars or increase their tax dollars. So, you know, there's a lot of, you know, play in politics, and who knows what will happen with that. But as of right now, it's a great way of kind of circumventing that, because we all know it is really hard to afford housing in, well, I'm up in Northern Virginia, but in our state overall, it's hard to afford the housing on the amount of Social Security we receive. So
we do have a question.
Sure.
So they're asking, is there a template where you can plan each pot of money, what expenses it pays for, ABLE, first party trust, third party trust? And
so they all pretty much use the same one. And if you look at I can send it out in an email to everybody after, but the ABLE Foundation has a very comprehensive list of what is a qualified disability expense, right? But the Virginia ABLE Now account page has it listed there as well. But it is anything that can be qualified as for the benefit of the disabled person that is supplementing those needs, right? The only difference between what you can use on the special needs trust and the ABLE is housing. Okay, housing and food. Food is on neither one. But housing is on able and not on the special needs trusts. And of course that could change too. You never know. They rewrite laws all the time. But
And what is the maximum annual contribution for an able?
so unlike a 529 where it is owned by the person donating the money or that is the donor, an able account there can only be one per donee. So the special needs individual, the disabled individual can have one able account. The gifting limit per year is $15,000 per person per year. So I could put in 15,000, my husband could put in 15,000, grandma can put in 15,000. However, you can gift multiple years at a time. You just have to keep track of that for tax purposes.
So let me understand that, because actually I didn't understand this if I heard you correctly. So one, like a parent can put in 15,000 and then a grandparent can put in the same year 15,000. So
Yeah.
the limit is per person, not per the recipient.
Correct.
Oh, very good.
You got it.
Okay.
Yes.
And the follow-up on that other question was, she says, explain food, please, how that works, I guess.
Okay, so Social Security is supposed to cover your food and your housing, right? So your basic sustenance. So your groceries is not considered a qualified disability expense. However, going out to eat, you could put as entertainment, and that could be a qualified disability expense. But food and housing is what is not supposed to be supplemented. Does that answer the question?
I think so. How about, I mean, clothing, that's a qualified disability expense?
I believe you can supplement clothing, yes.
Okay, and she asked, what about special diets? Does that impact it at all?
As long as it is prescribed, right? So if a doctor writes on a notepad, prescription pad, that a child is supposed to have a certain formula, for example, or a certain medically prepared food, right? That may not be reimbursed by Medicaid.
Okay, the example she gave was gluten-free or dairy-free. Is that?
So
No.
not usually, no. It would need to be something that's more, if it is a specific medical type food, yes.
Okay.
But just gluten-free bread or something like that, no.
Okay, thank you.
And kind of where an easy distinction is they're going to recognize along the same lines that IRS and Social Security use a lot of the same kind of defining things when it comes to disability, right? So the IRS defines a disability based off of the Social Security's definition, right? And kind of back and forth. So if it is not something that would be tax deductible as a non-reimbursed medical expense because of food wise, I'm talking, then it probably is not a food that you could put as a qualified disability expense. Did I say that right?
Yes.
If the food is not being able to be written off as a tax deduction, then it's most likely not going to qualify under the disability expense.
Gotcha.
Okay. So establishing ABLE accounts, I get asked a lot. People will say, well, how do I set it up? You can do it in one of two ways. You can do it ABLE Now, Virginia ABLE Now. Like I said, it's the same platform as the Virginia 529. So you can do it directly through the state, or you can do it through the state sponsored investment vehicle, which is College America through American Funds. And that is, you would need to go through an advisor such as myself for that. So it really depends on how you're using it. If you want an account with a kind of like a debit card that, or check writing, you're going to want to go through the Virginia State program. If it's more of, this is money that's an investment vehicle, go through your financial advisor. Okay. And I said this before, the importance of ongoing planning, right? This is not a one and done kind of deal, although a lot of that work is done in the first go, right? Your special needs planning, your tax planning, your estate planning, and your financial planning all need to be updated on a very consistent basis, at least every year, depending upon where in kind of your life trajectory or transitional phase, as well as that of your child or family member, is where you want to check in. There might be times where you need to be updating or checking in on this every 6 months versus every year. It really kind of depends on where you're at. And there are some unique strategies that we can utilize for financial planning with special needs. As I said, there's two main ways to fund a trust: inheritance and life insurance. So we want to make sure we're protecting any inheritance, protecting it from estate tax. We want to also make sure we're protecting it against long-term care needs. Your biggest hit to your retirement egg usually comes in the last 2 years of your life, when you need more care and assistance. So having good long-term care coverage is important. And for today's generation, that is usually done through a life insurance rider, not a long-term care plan. But speak to myself or a financial advisor to kind of learn really how we could have a whole nother hour on long-term care, right? But there are very affordable ways you can protect yourself from long-term care expenses eating away at the money that you hope to leave for your adult child. There's hybrid annuities and life insurance, different ways that we can structure these to benefit the trust and the adult child. We want to consider strategies of gifting during our lifetime. We talked about the annual $15,000 limit. That's per entity, right? So what are some ways that we might want to gift money while we are alive to help reduce estate taxes or other things? Also, what will happen to your home? There's I am asked weekly, can I leave my home to my child so that they don't have to leave it once I pass? And that could very well be possible. There's a lot of management that goes involved in there. There's a lot of costs associated with doing that, assuming that your child cannot manage the home and the finances on their own. Any investments or business interests. If a portion of the business is left to the child, is there the ability for the business to buy the special needs child out? Will it create an income to the trust? Is all of the succession planning necessary when a business is involved done as well? And different types of investment accounts could have different types of consequences for the beneficiary. For example, I noted here retirement accounts, the Secure Act is fixed. So a Secure Act came out in 2019 and it did one really good thing. It made the required minimum distribution from your retirement accounts up to 72 instead of 70 and a half. But it took the stretch IRA out, which means if I inherited an IRA, I could stretch it out over my lifetime. Now that IRA has to be liquidated in 10 years, which created a big problem for people who were leaving their retirement money to their child special needs trust. It is now a spouse as well as a disabled child or minor child do not have that 10-year restriction for liquidating that account anymore. So, but it's still something we want to look at. We want to make sure we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed in relationship to how investments and other accounts are left. And life insurance, making sure it's listed to the name of the trust. Life insurance is a great way to fund the trust. There's less income tax implications and things like that. So we definitely want to discuss the type of assets that are going into the trust and make sure we are strategizing to the best of our abilities. And before we go into questions here, I'm going to give you my favorite two quotes. This one has hung on my refrigerator in my home for many years. My kids roll my eyes when I say it, but fair is not equal. Fair is everyone getting what they need to succeed. And that's the motto that I go by. And I love that little picture, especially since I have 3 kids. So it's always worked well. And this one is from a book, and it says long-term thinking and planning enhances short-term decision making. Make sure you have a plan in your life, have a plan of your life in your hand, and that includes the financial plan and your mission. And that's one thing that I really go over and dig deep with my clients. We can do this financial plan, but it's not really complete until we have identified what your mission is. What is your overall primary goal and vision for your family, for your plan? Because that will impact how we construct that plan. It's a waste of time to put together a plan if it is not in line with your visions and your goals.